Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's blog post. Uh, Happy Halloween. It is amazing that we are already at the end of October. Windows really closing in on the end of the year. Lots of things to go over, lots of things to cover, but I think it's really important to focus on the immediate. I'll get into more end of the year, conversations and strategies, next week and beyond. But this week in particular, it has to be focused on the fact that it's appropriate. Here we are on Halloween, and I think this article or this blog post I've named Trick or Treat because I think we're dealing with the Case-Shiller report, the JOLTS numbers, the ADP employment report, the GDP numbers, the pending home sales that came in, PCE that came in. This morning, initial and continuing jobless claims, and tomorrow the October jobs report. And oh yeah, let's not lose sight of a little thing coming up next week, called the election, because next Tuesday, like it or not, is going to determine the course and the direction of the country, in the weeks, months, and years to come. And it's going to take some time for the markets to sort out not only all this data this week, but the impact on whatever the election results are. And you're not just dealing from the president's standpoint, you're dealing with control of the House and the Senate and, hundreds, if not thousands, of municipal elections and state amendments to constitutions and all sorts of things that are going to impact. And so it's really important that you pay attention to that. Now, there is some good news in the fact that at some point in the next few weeks, the dust is going to settle down. All the knee-jerk reactions to all this information will subside, and the markets are going to figure out their own course and what it's going to mean to them. And we're all going to prepare and embrace the pending holiday season and the very path that leads to 2025. It's just not going to be an instantaneous correction. We're not going to wake up, anytime next week and the bond market has improved 3, 4, 500 basis points. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen is people are going to settle into whatever the information is, and we're going to start that path again. At some point, again, to lower interest rates, a more normal Fed overnight lending rate. And again, it may take a while for the long-term market to catch up to the short-term market as the Fed cuts, but it's inevitable. It will follow. We just can't predict the rate and the speed. And that becomes the real trick of all of this data, all of this interpretation, all of these results. And the protection always is for rates to go higher. The volatility, as you've seen the last, ever since the Fed cut rates, to be honest with you, we've seen the long-term market just continue to slide further and further and further, and pricing getting worse and worse and worse for our consumers. So understand that it's not going to change overnight, and it may take a while. Now, here's something that we know for sure, and it's not subject to interpretation. It's factual. Is that housing is still going to be in demand, and the trend is going to continue, where home prices are going to continue to rise. Certain price points, certain types of properties, certain parts of the country, certain areas within those places certainly are going to have different responses. But what you have to remember is supply and demand, and the actual housing shortage is understanding that prices are going to continue to rise. And where that trick gets people is the problem that they initially see, and their reaction to it is to turn around and say, well, I'm just going to wait until the housing market and until interest rates get better, when all the dust will settle. And once all that happens is when I'll earnestly go out there and buy that house. Well, the problem with that, the trick to all this is twofold. There are two major problems here. Is number one, while that customer is waiting, we all know that the cost of that house is going to continue to rise and outpace their ability to overcome how quickly the price is going up versus what they can save, and how that's going to impact them in the long term. Because you have to think on a $400,000 house, and let's just say if we say we're appreciating at a 4% rate, that house is slipping away to the tune of $1,300 or more a month. That's very real. How many people are we working with where, $1,300 a month compounded over and over and over again is something that's sustainable for them? The second problem, the second trick, if you will, with that is, once people think rates are where they want them to be, all of the people who are sitting on the sidelines with that strategy are going to hit the market together. And what does that mean? It means we're going to have a lot more people looking to buy. The more people that are looking to buy the inventory that's available, that's going to push prices much higher, much faster. So that is really the thing that you have to pay attention to, what you can carry forward right now during this time of not knowing when the markets are going to stabilize themselves and correct to a path that becomes more logical, if you will. Now, here's the treat that also is involved in this conversation. And the thing that you can put on the table to your client who's, you want to avoid being tricked into making a bad decision. Here's their two-step process. Buy the house today. The greatest part about that is if you're buying the house today, you've got less competition to buy that house, because there are people who are going to sit on the sidelines waiting for quote unquote rates to get to where they want them to be. Well, the good news is the houses are out there, which means there's less competition, which means while prices continue to rise, they're not rising as fast as they're eventually going to once interest rates continue to drop and more people come into the market. So when you're shopping, you've got less competition, things become much more negotiable, much more friendly. The second treat to this is close on that house. Whatever the price is at the time, whatever the rate is at the time, whatever the deal needs to be at that time. Here's the good news. You're locked in. You're locked in the price of that house. You own that house. It's worth what it's worth. You now have it. And when interest rates, or when things settle and interest rates do go back and start to gradually go lower, that customer can then look at the markets, follow. You can look at the markets and follow. You can predetermine at what point am I going to be happy with where interest rates are, and you can pull the trigger on a refinance. And then you get the best of both worlds. I got the house at a much more reasonable price. I avoided the escalation of appreciation sitting on the sidelines. I avoided the competition and the price increases that is going to bring to the table. And I refinanced out of the rate that I had, and I can get the one that I want. In addition to that is also a bonus treat. And you have to think of it this way. And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I don't believe this is going to happen. But we all know in this world, you're never 100% certain of anything in this world when it comes to the markets and geopolitical situations and all that other stuff. What if that client goes out there and buys that house? You get them in the house. They've got a payment that they're managing and they're comfortable with. What if rates don't ever fall? What if rates don't go lower? What if rates continue to push higher and higher and higher? Then guess what? You've locked into the price of your house. You also locked in the payment on your house. You've locked in what will be a deal in case of that scenario if rates go higher. And remember, all of these people, it's not that long ago, when rates were 2 and 3, all the people who sat back at didn't buy at 4 or didn't buy at 5 because they were waiting for things to go back to 2 or 3. And we watched rates go up into the 8s, remember? And the people who bought at 5 and 4 and 6 ended up with a hell of a deal compared to those who had to get into the market at 7 and 8. And so those people who got those 4, 5, and 6% interest rates back then, who thought that, oh, wow, I wish I could have, I would have pulled the trigger on a 3. They were pretty happy with 4, 5, and 6 when rates were 7, 8. So keep that in mind. It's always the time to look at your primary residence with open eyes and saying it's likely in most every circumstance that the cost of the home that I really want to own is going to be more expensive tomorrow than it was today. That's just historically the way things go. Are there peaks and valleys? Yeah. Do houses sometimes, does the cost of housing go back? Yeah. You remember 2, 3 years ago when they were talking about the housing bubble and the big crash? Didn't happen. Well, all those people looking back and saying, I should have bought then. This is the conversation that you can have, understanding full well that, with all the information that's going to come out today, tomorrow, next Tuesday's election, God only knows what the reaction to all of that's going to be. We don't even know when we might get whatever the results are going to be. It's going to take some time for the dust to settle. That doesn't mean you can afford to sit on the sidelines and wait. It means being proactive versus reactive has many more benefits than sitting back and doing nothing. As always, if you have questions or comments, it's Mike at impcoaching.com. We'll talk to you again real soon. Take care.